Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Dave, thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Exceptional, getting better every day, you know?
Awesome.
Yes, sir. So I'm excited because we are literally neighbors. You're in Massapequa, I'm in Farmingdale,
Right.
literally like a few minutes away. It's incredible. When we think about the impact we make in the world, it sometimes and you're a public speaker as well. You go all over the place and you impact people. Before we get into what you're doing today and how you've come about to realize what all your gifts are, I want to get back to when you were a little guy, when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where'd you grow up? Who influenced you the most, would you say, around that time? Then we can go up from there.
Yeah, sure. You got to know where you come from to know where you're going, and that's a big, thing. I grew up in Brooklyn. I was born in San Antonio. My dad was in the Air Force, so I always have respect for those who served in the military, who've given their time. And then, they came back to Brooklyn. That's where my parents were both from, and I have a long history of family coming from Brooklyn. So I grew up in Brooklyn. Most of my life spent up in Brooklyn. Blue collar mentality, blue collar thinking, work hard, and all those things. So it was really great. I mean, I had role models. You don't think about them. Everybody you're around is a role model, either positive or negative. I mean, my own dad was a role model in a lot of different ways, some positive and some not so positive, which has led me to where I'm at now, but also led me into areas where I might not have wanted to go. So, while we maybe emulate or we see things we want to do, how we might want to do it differently also impacts the way we are. So that's where role models are so important. Our children see everything we do, and that's why we strive and need to remind them. I think that's a really big thing as we grow up, is to remind not only our children, our partners, whoever is involved in our life, exactly what we're doing, at least from our perspective, because it's not always received in the same way that it's meant to.
Yeah, definitely. So your dad was a big role model for you. When outside of your family, who would you say later on became a big role model for you as well?
Yeah, so I've had teachers, I've had a lot of people, and then recently, one of my father-in-laws. I mean, both. I've been married a few times, and my father-in-law, and the reason why he's one of my role models. Wasn't perfect, had a life, but his family loved him. His family accepted him for all the imperfections, but also the perfections that he did. And once I got to meet him and really get to know him and have private conversations where there were things he was like, please don't share this with anybody else. So of course I'm not sharing it today, but but it's one of those things is, we know each one of us, not only our role models, but each one of us, we all carry things that we don't know what to do with, or we don't know how to carry it in a way that's more helpful for us, or maybe it's really not for us to carry, but it's something that somebody just needed to unload and give us that safe space. And that's really where I've gone, around by growth and looking for role models and coaches and things like that, is really just to see how other people have done it, how other people have overcome the challenges. We've all experienced challenges. And when I started thinking about it, you asked me about my childhood, I came up with a process during the pandemic called Kluberty. And it's that moment where we grow up and we're like, how'd I get here? And I looked at my childhood. I got picked on, like many of us. And some people react differently than others. And how you can feel it, how you internalize it, how people have said talk to you, even in a loving way. Sometimes the things that we hear don't feel like it's in a loving way.
Mm. You know, you made me think of that old saying that success leaves clues,
Mm,
right? Because if we look at a successful person, everybody's like, oh, everything's peachy, but it's not. They've had their ups and downs as well.
mm.
But what do we want to emulate? We want to emulate the wins, right? That's really what we want. We don't want to know, we don't want to go through the hardships that they have gone through to get to where they are. Because a lot of, there's tears, there's blood, there's sweat, there's hard work that goes into success. And some people only see the limelight. They only see the lights that are shining. They don't see the behind the scenes, right?
Well, that's exactly it. Now that I've been a published author and podcast and all these other things, people are like, oh man, I would love to do that. Well, right now I'm in the process of teaching people how to do that, expanding my practice, but they don't really see all the work that goes into it. They just want
Mm,
to see the finished product. They
right.
want to see the climbing on top of the hill, the black belt in your world, right? I want to be a black belt. Well, you don't do it in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's not a 6 week course.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces towards the stuff that to get to what you want, and that's why it really is, as you said, it's found in the successes. How'd you get here? When did you want to give up? I've look even recently. There's times I'm like, I'm going to give up. What am I doing this for? And then you
Mm,
sit within yourself, or I sat within myself and said, can I really give up? And the answer is no. It's easy to say give up. It's hard to give up if you're that type of person.
mm,
And I think that's really what really brings us to that next level is the people who didn't give up. It's not, even the Tony Robbins of the world, the stories, right? He lived in a car, he had no
mhm,
money, and he didn't give up because there was no other option. It
right.
really is looking at it. Is there an option to give up? There's always an option to give up. I'm, part of my story is I tried to kill myself, and I was
Mm,
told during that episode that it's not my time by whatever. But at the end of the day, since then I have a TEDx talk. So you have to figure out what you want.
mm. I lost you for a second. So while you come back, I am gonna definitely come back to when you said you wanted to take your own life. I lost you for a second, so
Oh,
I
okay,
do want to come back
sure.
to the moment in time where it was so low that you even considered taking your own life. I love to go a little bit into it, not too deep, but because your resolution as to why it was not something you went through can help somebody who may be going through that right now today.
I agree 100, and that's why I don't mind sharing my story. It's
I
not
appreciate it.
how great I am. It's just by the grace of God, and I do believe God definitely had a hand or a figure finger in on it.
Mm,
Sometimes life gets too overwhelming. The year before I tried to hurt myself, I'd lost my own dad. My dad passed over. I was
mm,
his main caregiver at that time. He was in a nursing home, but I was the one who was getting the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when he needed to, when he was walking out because he didn't want to be there anymore.
mm,
I was dealing with all the medical decisions that needed to be made, and that weighs on you. And at that time, my mother's physical ability was breaking down, and I was then transitioning her to move to Houston where my sister lives. Even though I'm still the one who was responsible for a lot of the decisions, we would make it as a family. But at the end of the day, I had the legal, you know, I had the legal permissions to be the one to take care of it. So it's just moving her from New York, which is where her whole life was, to Houston, and you know sort of I knew when she got on that plane to leave to Houston, I was losing my mom.
mm,
I saw her afterwards and I was able to go visit. And, There's some stories about that, but it really is one of those things that you go on and it becomes overwhelming. I was having challenges with my business, with being an entrepreneur. It's hard, as well as a full-time job, as well as teenage girls, being married at that time.
Mm,
There were so many things that we all weigh, and I wasn't taking care of myself. I was helping others, but I wasn't taking care of myself. That was the one part that I really learned, that when I don't take care of myself, things break down,
mm,
and it becomes much harder for me to take care of anybody else. That's why there's that part of I'm just gonna keep going. There's that part of keep going and finding the oxygen mask where we need to have the oxygen mask, because that's the really powerful part, is when we have, because that's the real reason why
mm.
they say that when you get on a plane is because you'll pass out if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself. You
Right.
can't help you somebody else, and people don't realize that. They just think, "Oh, we should take care of ourselves first." We should, but the reason is why, is the knowing the whys we do things. That's what really makes us do it. It's in the routine.
Yeah. Here's Jose Escobar saying how great of a person you are, and
Yeah,
he's happy that you're on the show and you're first class. But when I want to kind of delve back into
mhm,
that a little bit. There had to be a moment in time, and I know you brought everything together. Your dad passed away, your mom, you sent her to Texas to live with your sister. What was it like when you said, I don't want to live anymore? What was it that you said, this is it, I'm done, I'm signing out? And then what brought you back to say, wait a minute, I am worth living. I am worth something. I am worth more than me signing out. What was that?
I was in a really comfortable place. So it wasn't a situation that I was like, "Oh my god," I was really comfortable that those were the last breaths I was gonna take. I had created a plan, and I won't go deeper into that plan. But, by having that plan and the day of the plan, I wrote 50 letters to people to try to
Mm,
explain to them what they were going through and what I was going through, and they couldn't have done anything. So it wasn't a situation that, "Oh, Dave, you should have reached out." It wasn't a situation. Every situation is different, so I don't wanna make it sound like this was, but this was my experience. And when I closed my eyes, where I thought that those was the last breaths I was taking, um I was pretty comfortable. I was really relaxed and, wishing to take on to the next journey. But at some point during that process, I had heard a voice, that's why I say God or Grandpa Mike, um, comes into my life, this voice comes in, and, it's somebody who I didn't know, and they said, "It's not your time. You need to talk about it. You need to move through it, and this is not where you stop."
mm,
And so, I tried 3 different ways. So,
mm,
one thing I'm really not good at is, hurting myself. But, I now know one of the biggest questions that I had weeks after that attempt was, "Do you love yourself?" And
mm,
I paused. It shook me to my knees, and I didn't love myself. I mean, shortly after the attempt, a person came up to me and threw uh, a lot of verbal words at me that were hurtful and made me cry. And
mm,
that was one of those things. So I was like, okay, if it's not my time and I don't love myself, we need to start rebuilding what I do know. I knew how to take care of people. I had worked with people who tried to hurt themselves. So I knew the
mm,
right things to do. I shut down my business at that time because I wasn't in the place to help somebody. I wasn't going to be half-assed. I mean, that's really, and I took care of myself. I put myself into therapy. Immediately they give you these drugs, and I took myself off as quickly as possible because they'll go, but it'll mask the pain.
right.
I don't believe that I should mask the pain. Even today's world, when I have pain, I acknowledge it. I
Mm,
don't like it and I don't want it, but I want to know, why is it affecting me? And what is it affecting me? Now, there's things I wish were different. I 100%. I wish I was different, or I reacted differently at a lot of different times. But now I know, and I can see things much quicker because of my perspective, but also my ability to slow down my mind. I'm
Mm,
now less in trauma. Growing up in a world of trauma, and we all experience it differently. That's really one of the things that changes us in a world where when we're able to make those changes. I mean, so in the martial arts world, at the beginning when you start training, you're slower, but now
mm,
you don't even have to think about some of the moves. And when you watch it on video, you're like, whoa, I didn't, you might not have realized it, but you knew you could do it.
mhm, mhm. You know, one of the things that I definitely want to touch upon that you brought up was that you said it's not my time, and the voice that you heard was not, it's not your time. And what I want to put out in the world right now is that it never is your time for you to end it yourself, right?
That's right.
We have to give it to the grace of God. When it's your time, it will come.
Yeah.
It will come by either you're dying of old age, you're dying of some crazy disease that's out there, or you're dying because of an actual accident, a car accident, a plane, whatever it is. But it's never your time when you have to do it yourself. That I want to make sure everybody understands that, because you should never be in that position or put yourself in that position. And if you feel that you need to be in that position, you need to first internalize how well you've made a difference in this world, right? And how your decision alone will impact the ones you love, because they will never have answers. You can write a book on why I'm about to kill myself, and it will still not answer everybody's questions of why,
One,
right?
I agree 100%. And
Mm,
at any point, your life can change, can turn around and change. And I didn't want to change. I mean, so you hear a lot of the stories because I thought I was doing everything that I want to do. I didn't see a lot of the things that I was doing, or that how I felt it and why I felt it. Now I understand why the things. I mean, one of the things I was holding back, which I didn't realize, was survivor guilt.
mm,
I had a girlfriend who got killed by a drunk driver in our 20s, and I'm much older than that. And 30 years later, I'm crying when I'm reading some of the poems I read to her.
mm,
And then I realized that because I told her, "Go to the party, have a good time." And she
right.
was walking on the street. She wasn't driving. She's doing the right thing. And that's why we need to make sure. So when you ask me that question about, it's not my time, I believed it was my time because I decided it. But then I've now kind of given it up to God.
Mm,
And the way I give it up to God is it my responsibility? So when people tell me certain things, I go, is it my responsibility to react? Is it my responsibility to do something? Like I send out love in many different forms to a lot of
mm,
people. It's their responsibility to receive it. It's not my responsibility to make sure they get it.
yeah, right.
If they get it, they get it. I still can love people who don't want to receive my love. That doesn't mean my love doesn't go out there, right? I
Mhm.
still move the energies in a different way, and by doing that, that's where our biggest impacts come from.
Absolutely. And, I want to praise God that you listened to the voice that day, that you are here with us today to share your knowledge, your experience, your trials and tribulations, because I'm sure that was a very tough time for you, a very emotional time. And I also love the fact that you talked about that you sought therapy and they gave you drugs. And what you did is you got rid of them as soon as possible, because you didn't want to put a band aid on a problem, because the problem is bigger than that little wound, right?
Mhm.
It's an overall bigger problem. So a lot of, and that's what happens with Western medicine, if you will. They put a band aid on a situation. And while Eastern philosophy or medicine, they look at the whole being. And for you took the Eastern approach, if you will,
Yeah,
and you decided to take a look at the whole person, the whole you. And realizing that you didn't love yourself and that you needed to change that. And I'm so happy that you did that.
Yeah, yeah, that's the really powerful change is that we can always have the opportunity to make those changes. And I knew that then. I don't want to make it sound like I've learned all these things. I didn't always apply it. How I use it, how I explain it all often is having that gym membership. And if we don't go to the gym, it doesn't really matter that you have a gym membership.
Mm,
So it really is applying the things that we need to apply and moving through it. But it is always an opportunity to change what you need to be changed because you've heard all the stories of people who try to, and most people are not successful. We hear lots of successful stories, but statistically speaking, 89% of suicide attempts are not successful.
mm,
That means there's a lot of people who then have additional shame, have additional issues that they might not go for it, and how to work through that. So there's a lot of us who are out there who might have tried it and now don't know what to do. You know, there's lots of different steps, and that's why finding the right people, the right role models, as we started earlier,
mhm,
or the right people to talk to. It doesn't have to be a role model. There's lots of different ways to go, and I definitely say if you need to go to a therapist, go to a therapist. But there's other people who are part of that support. When we look at our own supports in life, it's not just us lifting us up. There's so many others who are behind us, either through friendships, through mentorships, through like Jose, you and I, though we were so close, we lived so close together, we might never have met without
mhm,
Jose from Maryland, right? Really, it's the magic of how we're all connected. And once we're all
mhm.
connected, that's the really powerful piece is what do you do with those connections?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I want to thank you for taking the time and even talking about such a delicate matter. Because a lot of people, there's shame, there's guilt. They don't want to talk about certain things.
Mhm.
And for you to say, you know what, I'm willing, and the reason you went through this whole process was to help someone else. So sometimes in Chinese or in certain other cultures, they call it eating bitter, right?
Mm.
So you have to eat bitter to taste the sweetness later, right? It's like that candy. What is that one? The Sour Patch,
The
right?
Sour Patch Kids, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so,
But that's really what life's about is
mm,
we only know sadness when we've experienced it.
right.
While I might not have experienced the sadness that maybe you have in your life, but we understand it on a level, right? That empathy.
Mm,
And that's a really big piece. And really having those communications, sharing that what I've done is not a pride. It's a pride that I've overcome. But that doesn't mean I'm not anything special. If you look at anything I do, there's nothing special. It's putting yourself in the right opportunities. So I could have said, no matter what voice I heard, it's not my time. I could have said, no, it is my time.
mm,
We make choices. It's free will. God gives us free will, right? The universe gives us free will. But I decided, and I looked at the facts, not the emotions. Sometimes our heads are the worst place will be. The monsters in our heads are much worse than anything else that we can ever face. But, you know, learning those things and how to overcome them, that's what really sets it apart. Because even if I stop doing everything I did today, people look at what I did and they'd be like, he didn't give up. If anything, those next few years, including through a pandemic that everybody's complaining about. Everybody's complaining about, oh, when we got shut down, let's go back to normal. You want to know right now, we're getting back to normal and people aren't as happy, right? We're still angry. We're so angry and people are in my way. That was what it was beforehand. Nobody wanted to go back. They want to go back to a world where there's no problems. That world does not exist. How we manage our problems, how we lift the pardons, the problems, and the burdens that we live with. That's the powerful part. And using that and doing that, that's where growth really comes from. Because what I'll do is I'll tell you this story. So we went through the pandemic. I've written a couple of books. So in the next couple of months, there's going to be like 3 or 4 books. I have a comic book. I keep talking about it coming out in the next couple of weeks. I used it for not only for my own personal growth, my own personal healing, but I decided to do energy. I didn't just sit there and watch and say, woe is me, I'm stuck in a house. I said, what can I do with that opportunity? And I think that's what we need to do, is look at what opportunities we could take. And my personal growth was also exemplified for me last year. Last year, so the year that I explained to you that I had to move my mom, my dad passed away, marital problems. That set me off to the point where I wanted to kill myself. Last year, well, my best friend passed away unexpectedly. He left a mother, he had no other family members, left a mother who had Alzheimer's at 82, as well as my own mother was transitioning out, and that's what I dealt with last year. The 3 things, including taking care of my kids, my own house, my job, and all these other things, and I was able to manage it differently. Were there times during that period that not wanted to hurt myself? I will never go back to that part, because now I found the love that I needed for myself, and because I found that love, I won't go back to that place. Could I be upset? Could I be sad? 100%. There are times I'm sad. Really, just a couple of weeks ago, there was times that I just felt the world getting too heavy for me, and I said, "Okay, then make it smaller." And that's what we have to learn, is when it gets too heavy, if we can't carry it the right way, find resources. If you can't be your own resource, find additional resources to help carry those burdens.
Yeah, I want to come back to something that you said, and you said you're not special. And I'm going to agree with you, because I'm not special. And the only the only people I ever consider special are the people who are idiots, right? Those are the special people. But I'm going to change it to not special, but unique, right? You're
Sure.
unique, right? You're unique in your own ways, the way you think, the way you act, the things you do, the way you speak, everything about you is unique. And that is way better than special, right? Because I told you what I
100%.
think of special people, right? So, but thank you for doing all that, and talking to us about this. I want to get into what motivated you to. We talked earlier, and you have a regular job that you go to now. You only go 3 times a week. I'm sure you still do things out of the house. You're doing your own entrepreneurial um, thing, right? You are
Sure, yeah.
written three to four books, a comic book as well coming out. I love that, and obviously we're so close to each other that I'm going to invite you to come to my boxing or my kung fu classes, whatever. But I don't want to hear a no. I want to hear, when can I
Yeah,
come?
we'll make the
Because we're
time. Sure.
neighbors, right? I need to give you a hug, by the way. So
Okay, well, I'm good. I'm a big hugger, so that's okay.
we're gonna hug it out. So here's the other thing. What prompted you to even, and you said that you didn't sit back and complain. You actually decided to take action. What was the prompt to say, huh, I'm gonna write this book? What was that?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to write a book. I mean, all the things that I've done, I've always said I wanted to do. So as a little kid, there was things I wanted to do, and I set myself, once I went through that experience, I said, "Okay, stop doing the stuff that you want to do, and what are you going to do?" And, it's still tough work. I mean, the first book that I published was a book of poems and stories, some which I had written years ago that I just tried to update a little bit. And I have my first book, which is such a touchstone for me. The first moment that you get a book that has only your name on it. I mean, I've been part of compilations, and our great friend Jose has his own book, and I've spoken to him about it. But holding a book that has your name on it is something different than having your name in it. And because of the circumstances and because of the story of the book, it was a bunch of poems and inspirational thoughts and stories of my life. It was really a piece of my heart that I wanted everybody to know how you can soar. It doesn't have to be the greatest stories. It could be, the story of my friend Kevin, who was walking up a mountain. He wasn't physically fit, We walked up Nevada Falls in Yosemite National Park, and at one point you could see that he wanted to give up. He wanted to give up. And I said, Kev, nobody will know. I'll go up to the top, take some pictures. Oh, easy peasy, right? And he was like, no, we're going up to the top. I'm like, okay. But he pushed himself physically. It was a struggle. It took us longer to get up the hill than it would have, right? They say it's a 2-hour hike. It took us almost double the time. But the thing that I really want to tell everybody is exactly like the book or whatever you want to do, get on a stage, all these things. The view at the top is much different than what you could ever imagine. I mean, if you think about anything that we've overcome in your life, every step brings you to another step, and the view just gets better and better. And that's why I'm pushing out these books. So I wrote all these things to kind of keep me busy during that time, and I'm now diving back into finishing them, editing them, and reliving it. There's a point of what we need to do is follow through, and that's where people have been coming to me again, balancing all the things that I balance. But now more people are coming to me and say, "Hey, how did you write that book? Can you help me write that book?" And the answer is yes. I know how to get stories out of people because I've always been a good storyteller, listener, and my reactions weren't always that great. Now my reactions are much better, and that's really what it comes down to. There's things that I bring to the table where when I first started my coaching practice, I was only talking about mindset. I can help you through traumas. I've helped Vietnam vets through traumas that they've experienced during wartime. And we've all done that. When we think about our childhoods, the things that we might have experienced. So I've helped a lot of people overcome challenges. It's not so easy saying, "Hey, Sifu, would you like to tell me the worst things in your life?" That's and you have to be careful because you want to make sure you're not playing the role of therapist because there's a definite line, and I'm not a therapist. That's why I call myself as a mentor. I know what I've gone through. When we're in a dark hole, I know the way out because I've gotten out of that dark hole. I've climbed, I've fought to climb over it. And now with these books, yeah, each one is written for a different reason, but it's a piece of me. I when I finish a book, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly how it should be. And that's the power. That's lifting me. I can make $1 on it or I can make $1,000,000 on it. Yeah, there would be a different outcome and different things I do. And that's why I give back to the world. I make sure I do a lot of charity work. Like this upcoming weekend, uh, on Saturday is a Veterans Day of Wellness. I volunteer my time out here on Long Island. The week after, I'm driving up to help is pulling each other along, a baseball geared charity that helps people pull each other along. That's one of the things we need to do is because it was created by a lot. There's a big story behind that. It's a great story. You should check out Dave Clark. Anybody who wants to know the pulling each other along, either look for Doug Cornfield or Dave Clark, and it's a great story. And I'm going to be up there helping children with disabilities with additional challenges play baseball.
That's incredible. That's incredible. You're doing so many great things, and thank you for all you're doing. But you're not just doing it here in Long Island. You're going outside of Long Island
Sure.
because you see that you are worth it. You are worth more. That you have a gift that you can help, and helping. A lot of people don't realize how just your time alone is probably more valuable than if you said, "Here's $10,000," and just not be at the event, because it's a huge difference when we can actually go and participate and help and touch the lives of other people. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's the to speak on that's the part. That's an organization I'm building out with my partner Morris Mayer on called Goons for Good. As you hear, I have that New York Brooklyn accent, but it really is showing up in somebody's life. Writing a check is awesome. Don't get me wrong. We'll take as much money as possible. There's a 501(c)(3) that's behind it, and but it's showing up and that hugging out that you mentioned earlier, right? It's really nice to have all these video calls, but it's that hugging it out. It's meeting those people. It's meeting people like Jose and his community, the CLA community. It's showing up in somebody's life to tell them I care. And that's the really powerful part, right? At that point, when I heard that it's not my time, somebody, it was a voice from wherever or however, but somebody was telling me, no, you're wrong. And that's okay to be wrong, but it wasn't my time. And that's why I love showing up with volunteerism and charity work because I want somebody else to see. And I've gotten a lot of conversations as I do speaking. They're like, "You do a lot of charity work. It's such an inspiration." And it makes them want to be inspired to do something in their own community because, one of the people I got to meet, I was lucky enough, blessed to call as a mentor and somebody who was involved in my life was Frank Shankowitz, who is the gentleman who created the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And his movies, The Wish Man, is on Netflix. I think if anybody wants to watch it, it's a worthwhile. It's a family uh, movie, so you can watch it with the kids. But the message that he always used to say is anybody could do something. You don't have to do big things. It could be the littlest things. And through Frank, I met William Anthony Dean, who has a charity on Long Island. Since we're both Long Islanders, Pink Cans for Cancer. And what they do is they collect cans and bottles and recycle them, and they help people with cancer. So I'm an active participant in that. There's always something that you could do in every aspect of your life, just a little movement. Because we make that little shift in the world, we all become better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think you and I have to do some work together for sure.
You
So,
got it.
I have a large facility. I have a 10,000 square foot facility. I'm sure we can use it on certain days to create some fun things
I am sure for
and
sure.
oh yeah, and we can definitely do some great things. And I've helped a lot of charities in the past, and I've volunteered and do things like that. I'm always, advocate for helping out someone. For me, it's always empowering the next person, guiding them so that they can shine. Because sometimes I don't need the spotlight on me, but if I can put the spotlight on you, man, that lights me up.
I I agree. All the things that I do, that's why a lot of things I don't put on like social media. It's not that I'm doing this. I'm not great because I'm just looking for the opportunities. Nobody has to do what I do. And I do what I wanna do, like, show up. So, another thing, so it was one of the conversations I do wanna have with you. There's a charity night for, July 29th, I think it is, here in Farmingdale for the softball league that I participated in. We have a charity where we help a young family. I've been doing it for 8 years, and we bring families, and that's one of the inspirational stories I'd love to tell, is one time we had brought this young man who had, lung disease, Nico, and everybody knew Nico all over Long Island. His family did a lot of charity work, and he came out there. The ambulance brought him out there, so he was really that level of disease. But he came out there and he inspired each one of us. And that's the thing is the people who are doing the work or showing up are not here to say it's all about me. It's more about all the people that help out. I don't do anything alone. I can't do everything alone. That's the thing I learned when life was too heavy for me. I was carrying it all alone. Did not work. We need to have people to carry things with us. We're not good at everything, but we are good at being ourselves and being our unique self.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. So when we think about inspiring others, right? You're doing so many different things as far as charity, but you're also guiding people to live a better life. Would you mind, as a mentor, as a coach yourself, tell us what inspired you to start that, and tell us about the program you're running.
Yeah. So really, what inspired me, the universe will bring us exactly where we're supposed to be, and sometimes it'll give us a little nudge, and we'll see the nudge, and sometimes it'll hit us a little bit differently. For me, my bachelor's degree was in behavioral sciences, and that's not the way I went for my career. But eventually, I got all the challenges, all the things that we didn't think we were. We go through so many things, and we say,
I lost your volume. Dave, can you hear me or no? You can hear me? Your volume just, you can hear me? I can't hear you either. Something happened with our volume. This is strange. Um, why don't you go out and come back in? Can you hear that? Okay, do that, and then I'll hold the platform until everything is good. So, what an incredible story of a comeback to realize that it it doesn't have to end for us, that we are worth more, that we have a purpose in life to inspire someone to come in and do something incredible, right? So, what gifts do you have that you can share with the world? Can you hear me now? Hmm, that is very curious. I'm gonna step out and I'm actually gonna open up another link and see what goes on here and see where we are with this whole thing. Let me enter the studio a different way and coming back in. Let me just check that my audio's good, all good. Can you hear me now? I can hear me. There I
There I am
am
twice.
twice. How about now? Can you hear me? Hmm, that is very strange. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this guy here. No, let's cancel that. Get rid of this one. I can't hear you, so I'm not sure. Let me see. Your audio went out. Wow, I have all different kinds of things going on here, but your audio went out and not happening. I know you came in and out a little bit. I try what you can. These things happen, right? So I hope that everybody can hear me. Technical difficulties. We were having a great conversation, and all of a sudden, we are not hearing my good friend coming through. So, what is it that that happens in our world that does not allow us to come through? I wonder. So, when we think about all the different things that happen, technical difficulties do happen when we do have a live podcast. Um, Not sure what happened. If he does not able to come back, we will have to do this at a different time and then bring it to you guys. I did want to talk to Dave about his podcast. He has a really cool podcast, how he started it, when his book is coming out, all these different things. So we will hang out for a little bit. If you are,
Yeah.
all right,
All
you
right, I
are
hear you again.
back. Yeah, that was kind of strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was weird because obviously you were hearing me, but I wasn't hearing you. I don't know
No, I
if it
was
was.
not hearing you. Your
Oh,
audio just went out
that was
as
weird.
you were talking. Yeah, yeah. So we're back. We're back. So I wanted to start talking to you about your podcast.
Oh,
When did you start your podcast? I love the name of your podcast. Tell us the name of it.
peace, love, and bring a bat. And of course, I have several bats to bring, but here's one of
Nice.
them.
Peace,
Um,
love, and bring a bat. I love
but
it.
what it's all about Really, when I go, it's spiritual, it's
Mm,
motivational, but it's perspirational. Much like we've been talking about what we've been doing, you have to do the actions.
mm,
You can't just sit here and sit on a mountain and go, "I'm going to be peace and love." You
mm.
can't do that. But at
Yeah.
some point, you have to get off the mountain.
Mm.
You have to get the food. You have to get something to
Yes.
do. Change your clothes. You have to take an action, and
Mm,
it's the actions that really are important. It's not because we all take different actions. The actions that might support me, you might not enjoy, and that's
mhm,
okay. So that's why I like bringing on guests to hear their stories, their uplifting stories. I've brought people on just because their stories are so impactful and we
mm,
need to hear them. And then there's people who have been on the podcast because they're mentors, they're coaches. And even though that's what I do, people go, but you're bringing on competitors. I'm like, no, we're all here to help each other. Not everybody might want to work with me, but I know people. That's again goes back to my goons for good idea. I know some people. I know a guy. I
mm,
know a woman. I know some people who can help you in different ways. How do you want to be helped? I don't help everybody in every way, but the
mm.
ways that I do, I'm really successful.
Yeah, I like that. I got a guy.
I got a guy.
Got a guy. Yeah. So, when did you start the podcast?
2.5 years ago. So in the middle of the pandemic,
Mm.
I had met, I don't know if you know George Andriopoulos. He's a local guy, big Farmingdale guy,
Oh, really?
and,
Okay.
we had some conversations. He actually was the producer of the TEDx that I spoke on, and I was asking him a lot of questions, and then the pandemic hit, and he's like, "You should do podcasting. If you're interested being a speaker, podcasting is one of those things that would be really good for you to do." And I said,
Mm,
"Okay, I know a bunch of people that I would love to have on my podcast." And I started it, but I came up with the name, and I really I'm a peaceful guy for the most part, but then, especially in my history, when I got angry, I was, some people used to call me a bear. You're either a teddy bear or a grizzly bear,
right.
and, but that's where I got the peace, love, and bring a bat, and the bring a bat is not about violence, it's about knowing our boundaries,
Mm,
knowing how to hit that sweet spot. If you've ever swung a baseball bat, when you hit the ball, no matter how it goes, when you hit it the best that you could, that you
mm,
didn't miss it, and it takes it to soar. And that's really what I do is I talk about bringing awesome thoughts or being authentic today. Part of the journey that I had is I wasn't as authentic as I was before I tried to hurt myself. But right
mm,
now, by telling my story, but also all the other things I do, wear that green suit, the teal suits that people might see, the logo with the cartoon version of Dave. Yeah, those are those things. That's who I am.
mm.
I'm the same person on the camera as well as off the camera, for better or for worse. Am I still, you know, do my friends still go, "Oh, that's Dave?" Yeah, but not now. I manage everything a lot differently, and because I've
Mm,
learned how to balance and react. So with the podcast, it's been a journey, man. I have over 125 episodes. I'm
nice.
we're right now on a break for a few reasons, and we're about to hit season 3, but we haven't. It's not consistent. It's not like every season has the same amount.
Mm,
I stop when I want to stop. I go when I want to go. Sort of like Forrest Gump,
all
uh, you know,
right.
and
On
you
your
know,
own terms. Got it.
yeah,
Got it.
it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I love bringing on people like yourself. So we need to get you on,
Sure.
and because it's the stories that we have. It's the pieces of like just hearing that we're not alone, and I think
Mm,
that's the really important part of when we're feeling sad. We're not alone, and by not being alone, that's where the power really becomes even more so important to hear and to know.
yeah, we're not alone. We're not alone. And
We're
you were
not.
not alone that day when you heard the voice. And I believe it was the voice from above. Um,
100%. I always had a strong faith in God,
mm,
but since that day, my faith is that much more stronger. And when I'm down every night, I say my gratitude. I do prayers in the morning. I'm a changed person because of it, and by allowing God in to empty the things that I need to empty, and put it into His hands, the things that are
mm,
his responsibility. The things that are in my control, it's my responsibility. My reactions, how I see things, how I do things, that's my control. Everything else is a little bit outside of me.
Yeah. Mandy says hi, by the way. Mandy
Yep,
Robinson.
I see.
Uh,
Mandy's always around. She's awesome.
she is awesome. She is awesome. You know, when we focus on us, then we're allowed to focus on others. But you said it way earlier in the beginning of the podcast, how you needed to, when you talk about going on an airplane and the importance of wearing the mask so you don't pass out, the importance of knowing the beauty that's inside of each one of us, because it's not the outside that really, it's a casing, right? It's a casing. If you, and think of this, right? If you grab a handful of peanuts, they may all look the same, but there may be a rotten one in there, right?
Mhm.
So we have to, it's the inside that truly matters, because if we think of it, if we were all blind, we wouldn't see what we see. We see what? We see imperfections, we see weirdness, we see all these different things on people, we see beauty, we see, but if we were all blind, what would we truly see? We would see the inside. And I think that's what a lot of people need to start seeing more today, because people see color, they see race, they see religion, all these things that separate us. Meanwhile, we're all the same on the
Well,
inside.
it's funny that you mentioned that. I literally just finished a book called Redemption. It's a storybook, so it's
Mm,
not about coaching, but there's a couple of uh, allegories in there that talk about perception and how we all might be right from our perception, but if we're allowed to see from other people's points of view, or see how we all integrate, how it all fits in for a greater purpose. That's the power. It's not saying that, oh, you're wrong because of the way you see things. I understand having that conversation on how you see things and why you see things. Part of it was a story about an elephant that I wrote. Is three blind people come up to the elephant and they touch it differently. One person touches the leg. Oh, this must be a tree, but you can
mm,
feel the bark, how tough it is. And they're not wrong, right? The leg of an elephant is very tough. And if you didn't know what it was, right, the concept. And each part of the elephant, the tail, the everybody thought it was something else. Oh, it's a rope. And
mm,
yes, it could have been a rope, but once they got to see it differently, if they didn't know, we only know from our perspective. That's why learning from each other and being a mentor, not necessarily in a coaching way, just showing up in people's lives and explaining, this is how I feel, and saying, well, this is how I'm receiving it. Because it's really
mhm.
important. I could say, again, there's the famous Brooklyn line, forget about it, right? Forget about it,
Yes.
right? Forget about it has a lot of different contexts, right?
Mhm.
As it's been explained in the movies, and anybody who knows about people from Brooklyn and Queens and the Bronx, forget about it could mean a lot of things. And the powerful part is learning which forget about it is the right one,
Mm.
and which one means you got to really stop what you're doing, or
Yeah,
which one of it is, was it a funny joke? Is a lot of different points, and that's part of the perspective.
it is. It is. So perspective is each person has their
Mhm.
own perspective, right? And I love the elephant story, because three different people had three different perspectives because of what they felt, right? But also sound sometimes, right? If you hear, I mean, you could as a public speaker yourself, your message can be perceived differently
Sure.
by everyone in the room. And if I love the old adage, or the old thing of telephone, right? When we have, I even do it with kids in the room, and it's hysterical, because by the end it's a whole different message, but it's what everybody heard, and then the way they interpret it. So
Mhm.
I love also the fact that you talked about having different mentors, having different coaches, because I personally have different coaches, and I'll even ask the same question to different coaches,
Sure.
and I get a whole different point of view, or even each one is telling me a different direction to head to. So it's up to me to decipher what direction do I want. Because if I talk to 4 different coaches, each one of them is going to bring their own uniqueness to it. We talked about uniqueness before. And then it's up to me to either follow exact guidelines, because there is success in the way they did it. But maybe it worked for them. So do I have to tweak it so it works for me, or do I do it exactly the way it worked for them and then go back and complain to them? They say, hey, I did it exactly the way you told me. It didn't work for me. And they said, wait a minute. Why did you do it exactly the way you did it? You're not me. You're you. So you
Right.
have to interject your own uniqueness into it, right?
That's exactly right, because we only see from our perspectives, but if we learn from it, that's why we can learn from everybody. I've said it a million times. If you're the smartest person in the room and don't hear everybody talking, then that's a problem, because you're not learning. If you're in the room and among the people who want to learn, and you'll always go out of a room that with a lesson, with seeing something differently. And that's the really powerful part, is being able to see things differently. Again, another story is, everybody's perspective. So they go into the castle. The 3 people go to the castle. There's a farmer, there's uh, the baker, and then there's a carpenter. So they go up to the top of the castle, and each person sees from their perspective. Look, there's the farms. We're feeding the people in the castle. And then the carpenter says, well, look at all the houses I've built. So they do it. They don't realize how they interact with each other, and they're able to then grow to a bigger, stronger community, because each person's piece, each person's talents, each person's uniqueness, authenticity becomes stronger in their own way.
It sure does. It sure does. So you talked earlier about your books, your comic book. Do you have a date when those are coming out, or not yet?
It was supposed to be out. To be honest, it's not, the part that's supposed to be out is not within my control. I'm waiting for I've learned the process. So life is a bunch of processes, as our good friend Jose talks about. Life is process. So the process I wrote the story at the beginning of the pandemic. Then I had to find the right people to draw it. Though I'm good behind the. One of my talents is behind the lens. As a camera person, I like to take pictures and photograph. Drawing is not one of them. So I got an artist. Then you have to color it. And now we're at the stage where it's lettering. It's the actual words that are being on there. So it should be done within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Then it takes another 2 or 3 weeks to get it actually published. It was supposed to be done already, but people's delays, and life gets in the way.
Yep.
And I understand that everybody's life gets in the way. So I'm really hoping by midsummer, definitely by October, at the CLA big blowout in Baltimore. So it's really, all these things are coming together, and by then I'll have 3 or 4 books fully done, published, because I had the frameworks, except for that book, the Redemption. Redemption will be coming out July 10th, because I finished it when I explained to everybody that in the past month I had a challenge. I was feeling sad. I was feeling questioning myself, and I knew that I had to move my energy differently. What was I focusing too much of my energy? We need to create that balance. And I just wrote this book that was in my head, about a story about a girl riding a horse, and whose mother was running a horse rescue, and the challenges that a teenage girl goes through, and comes through with some help and some learning and changing lives. And I came to it. handed it off to my editor, and the editor is cleaning it up right now. And we're fully expecting by July 10th, which is my dad's birthday. So it's an
Nice.
honor. And then my mom's birthday is the 15th. So the week of July 10th through 15th, I'm going to be putting it out there. And I can't wait to really take it to that next level, because that's the first book that I'm really putting out there as a storybook, and just see what type of reception I get on it. But it's made me happy. And that's one of the things that we all have to remember. No matter what tasks we have, if it makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody, go for it. It's all about moving our energy, and whatever happens to it, you're putting it out into the universe as good energy. If you put it out as good energy, the universe will respond equally back to you.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely. And if it makes you happy, man, do it. Right.
Exactly.
And what makes you happy? Hey, guess what? Someone else may get happy for you doing it as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Listen, I want to thank you for today. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulty there in the middle, but I'm glad that we were able to resolve it, because everything you said really hit home for a lot of people, including myself. And, don't go away as we say goodbye to everybody. But I do want to let everybody know that do follow Dave, right? His books are going to be exceptional. I know that. Listen to his show, and the show is on Apple Podcasts, and tell us the name of the show again. Love,
Peace, love,
peace.
and bring a bat.
Bam, and you're going to hit it out of the
Yeah,
park. I know
make
that.
sure you hit your sweet spot, and that's
That's
really
it.
what it comes down to.
Yeah, beautiful. And anytime you've ever hit a ball, and I know I have, it's such a good, when you're hitting it out of the park, you get that feeling inside. It's like, wow, that one is it, right? So good for you, my friend. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm happy that we finally got to it, right? We've been trying to get this together. So thank you. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you. All right, everybody. Have an amazing and exceptional day today. Take care, everybody.